Greetings. Welcome to Den of Discussion with your host, Douglas Robbins. Today we have a very special guest, Indra Rinzler. He is a spiritualist, a mystic, a shaman, a Vedic astrologer. He goes by many labels, but none are really that relevant other than the definition of the man. Welcome, Indra. How are you?
Thank you. I'm wonderful and happy to be with you today.
So there's so much, we were just discussing, and there's going to be so much we do discuss, but I was reading your bio. And it said from an earlier age, you were really connected with numbers. That kind of fascinates me because the universe is sort of numbers based and not letters or alphabet, obviously. So, what does that mean exactly when you say you were really connected to numbers?
Well, I like to say the only thing I ever really wanted to be was a statistician. And I remember looking in the New York Times because I was from New York and looking for statistician jobs at maybe like 11 years old. But I think it was just it's a mathematical frequency that thinking in terms of numbers and looking at a picket fence and maybe counting the struts. It's just thinking in terms of numbers. But in the bio, the point was is that the numbers have kind of left, and in starting to write and starting to use verbal more, that the words have sort of disappeared, that the words have come and replaced the numbers. I remember maybe 5, 6 years ago, I was selling. I used to be a trader. I would buy goods overseas and bring them here, spiritual items, and sell them. So I bought one year. I bought some stuff after I had stopped doing that, and I sold them to them some things, and they were six each, and they bought nine. So I say to myself, six times nine. Now that's 54, isn't it? And up to 60 years old, that never would have happened, but I kind of forgot them. The numbers disappeared. But while I still use, I don't, the math is the thing that I don't use so well, but I do work with frequencies and vibrations more. That the Enneagram types, which is something that I do, I see them as frequencies. That it's like the prism, the white light comes through the prism and it's refracted into 7 identifiable rainbow colors. I consider that to be the same as the Enneagram types, that the 9 Enneagram types are frequencies and vibrations. And I don't know what the prism is, whether it's our brain or our personality or our survival drive or the atmosphere, but we are divided into these 9 personality types, and we need 9 personality types because it's a social species. We need the different personalities. If we all had the same personality, not much would get done.
Elon Musk said something recently that would just kind of stuck with me. He said, "We have to die because if we didn't die, there would never be new ideas born." He said we would ossify if we just kind of lived forever in this, body and never died. I just thought it was an interesting point, because it does allow new birth of new ideas with new generations, et cetera. But I just thought it was an interesting idea. So,
Do you want me to comment on that?
sure, sure. Or
Yeah,
do we
so
live
I think
forever?
Yeah, so I think we can live forever, and I don't think we have to die. But the fact is that in a sense we die daily. In a sense we die to a way in order to get a new idea. That in order to take in a new idea, we have to let go perhaps of an old idea. So
Yeah.
so while I don't think that the lifetimes, I don't think that we can never that we have to die or society will stagnate. I think the idea is that there is a death involved, but it isn't necessarily the death of the body.
Right. We can, old ideas or old personalities or old ideas or patterns that we hold on to can certainly and often do need to die for a rebirth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For
Absolutely.
that consciousness to come forth. Um, so, what is an enneagram of personality?
So the Enneagram is a term from Greek that means nine-sided figure. It's a teaching about 60 years old, and it comes from Gurdjieff, which many people don't know these days. You might be of an age where you remember Gurdjieff. He was Well, he was the father of the new age.
Okay.
Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society was the mother. They started in New York in 1875, but Gurdjieff started teaching. It was in Paris in the 20s and 30s, and started teaching in Russia in 1916. And Ouspensky was his student in the Search of the Miraculous. But anyways, he came up with the Enneagram. He was a mysterious teacher, and we have no idea whether it was his idea or he got it when he traveled to Asia, though he never said he traveled to Asia. Everybody says he went. And it's the idea that there are 9 personality types. Enneagram is 9-sided figure, and so he put planets on the points, he put foods on the points, he put musical notes on the points, but they never put personalities. And I believe that while psychology was known in the 1880s, it wasn't really codified until the 30s, the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And so at that point, then it was to a student of Gurdjieff, who then was a psychologist and spiritual, that he put personalities at the points. And so the idea is that this is an archetypal system, that there are 9 personalities, and I believe that is the archetypal system. It is the 9 personality stories that help to unwind the 2 to 5,000 year old Judeo-Christian tradition conditioning, which is what we're all stuck in. These ideas about shoulds and need tos and comparisons and judgments and limited ways of thinking have come down to us, been handed down to us from generation to generation.
Often we hear such and such has been lost, meaning some, information has been lost over time, and we've been disconnected from it. And I have a small theory on that. Is like, long ago, sure, maybe people were illiterate, ignorant, but they also didn't have dogma that they were adhering to. There wasn't that comparison, as you were saying, or maybe a vengeful God, or if you do X, Y, Z, you'll get to to heaven or something. So that would make sense in a way, because once, say, consumerism, work, and all those type of changes, industrial age obviously came later, but once kingdoms formed, it would make sense that people would have lost that time to be one with nature. And obviously many indigenous peoples, that was their customs, to sit and be thankful. They weren't rushing to the next thing. They were eating the buffalo or whatever it might have been, giving thanks to the Great Spirit, giving thanks to the buffalo, and that we all are one. And yet we have learned, with our consumerism and material goods, that we're not one, that we're sort of above everything. And obviously with climate change and is teaching us very quickly, no, you better get back in line with that, or you will soon be a thing of the past.
So there's an interesting theory that I believe that explains this very well. There's the ideas of the yugas, which are the Indian cycles of time. It's called the Great Year in Greece, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age. In India, they call it Sat Yuga is the highest age, then Treta Yuga steps down, and then Dwapara Yuga, and then Kali Yuga, which Kali Yuga may be a term that you've heard before. It's the densest age. So there's a theory that there is a upward thrust and a downward thrust in this, and it's based on, and you don't have to believe this part of it. This goes pretty far for people, but it's that the sun has a dual, and so the sun gets pulled, and when the dual, which is the in the Sirius, it's one of the Sirius planets, so that when they're close, then it's a higher age, and when they're further away, it's a lower age. And so we descended from these higher times, from Mesopotamia and before. The highest vibration language is Sanskrit, and it's the oldest language, and it still contains a lot of this high vibration. The words that we use and the languaging that we use with with mine and possession, and focus on me rather than focus on objects, which would be nouns, or actions, which would be verbs, has it's dense, and it makes one think in smaller terms. And so the density, the cycle that you talked about, we talk about that they knew in say 800 or 10,000 BC, they knew God as one, that they were connected with God. And then as the descending cycle came on, which the lowest point was 500 AD, then the higher ideas became changed into more practices. And then they came up with the priest class, and they loved that because they could make it a family organization, and that they knew, but the rest of us didn't know. And so the practices became very stagnant, and became very codified, if that's the right word, in order to be stabilized, in order to make it so that and we lost the essence of it, and we started doing the practice. There's an old story I heard many years ago about the Indian wedding. Has a lot of traditions to it, and so they get the bowl in the center of the room, and they prepare everything the way that it needs to be. You walk around, the married couple walks around the bowl 7 times, and there was a barking dog, and somebody said, well, tie up the dog. And so they had the ceremony, everything was wonderful. So the next marriage ceremony, they do them based on seasons, generally in India, 3 or 4 times a year that everybody gets married. So the next time they got everything together, and they got the bowl in the room, and they got the chairs in the right place, and then somebody said, where's the dog? So somebody got the dog and tied him up, and that became part of the ritual. And this is how, in the declining cycle, this is how it is. And then at 500 AD was the lowest point, and then we were in a Kali Yuga descending, and then we went into Kali Yuga ascending, and then in 1900 we went into Dwapara Yuga, the energy age proper, and everything has changed. And all of these old um, modalities from descending Dwapara Yuga, feng shui, yoga, and all of the new modalities that have come along with it have reappeared. And it makes complete sense that when you look at it charted out. There's a wonderful book called Simply the Yugas. It's very easy to read, written by some friends of mine. It's fascinating to read that well, when you see it on the chart, you see right across on a timeline, right across from when descending Dwapara Yuga ended, is right where we were, where the yoga disappeared, and now the yoga's come back. And it makes a lot of sense to me how that happened.
So hopefully we're in a period of ascension or expansion, and it seems like we are. Many people trying to kind of reconnect with their broader selves, and reconnect with more of a community oriented ideology, because you had mentioned sort of like a selfishness earlier, and when you're selfish, only thinking about yourself, me, um, you're disconnected from God or the divine, but you're also disconnected from your higher, better self.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a difference between being selfish, meaning limiting to yourself, and being self-centered, in a sense, which means that you feel yourself, and then you realize that you're actually everything, that there is, you let go of the individualism, and in the collective is when you find your true self, because the God is not outside ourselves. We are the God just as much as God is the God. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, what is you would know better than I. Is it in Hinduism that they call it Godhead? That meaning we all have sort of a piece of it, and all of it formed together creates this Godhead.
Yeah, Godhead, that sounds like the singers, the Godhead magazine, the ones that Hare Krishnas, There was their magazine Godhead. It's not a, it's a term I know from that, but I don't know it otherwise. But I would say that that's true.
Yeah, yeah. Again, without ego, those pieces, that conduit that we are connected to that divine, all bringing it collectively forward, we all bring our little piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not, even though I'm one for denigrating ego, there's nothing wrong with the ego. It's the way we use it, and it's the identification with the ego.
Yeah.
That's the problem. But the ego is the probably the survival drive. We need that to
Sure.
keep going. We need it as a uh, driving force. Perhaps that's not the right term. We need it as an inspiration within us. You need a steering wheel in a car. So the ego can be a little bit of a steering wheel. It's a help. But when we identify with it, then we limit ourselves.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been really trying to observe my mind, that chattering, and because it's always trying to make stories of any incident, event, comment, shrug, facial
Yes,
expression, and it's wrong 99% of the time, but it never admits it's
absolutely.
wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
That's the unraveling of the ego. It's beautiful. Yeah.
so let me ask you, to get into a more esoteric question, if we will. We hear often, this is physical, spiritual life in a physical body, something along those lines. Where would you?
Spirit,
Go
spiritual
ahead.
being in a physical body.
Yes, sir. Um, there's always that question of, where do we come from? Where does that spirit, that personality, that identity, that intention of spirit? It's easy to say, well, source, or it comes from God, or whatever, or maybe we're from this other planet or something. What insights might you have? I realize it is a grand question.
Well, yeah, see, so personality is associated with the body, and spirit is beyond the body. So it's a little confusing as to what the question is, but and I will say that why is not really important. The why is only important to the mind. The why is not important to the realization,
Sure,
to our realizing ourselves.
sure.
Where do we come from? I think that the purpose of the life is that the density, that this Kali Yuga, so it has value too. So what value does it have? I have a phrase I like to use. It's so obvious even I got it. That in the densification, it helps us to be able to let go of stories that we can't let go of any other way. In other words, on an ethereal level, if God says to us, if this is even possible, let go of suffering, and you say in the ethereal level, what, I don't feel any suffering, God says, well, let me put you in a body. and and then you say to God, I get it.
Yeah, now I get it. I've
Now
had
I
enough.
get it.
Is it, guy? I've had
So
enough.
so I mean, so the point is, the density is, I mean, how many people do you know that they've come up because they hit rock bottom, because their fantasies and their pains and their illusions have gotten to such a difficult place that they had to make a change, that they had to look within. I had a little laugh. I was at a client. I was at a fair on Sunday, and my client said, "Well, no, I've been studying this since 2020." And I said, "Wow, yeah, I can see.
Yeah,
2020,
yeah.
yeah."
Wow, got a long way to go.
So, yeah. So, well, I mean, he's making progress.
Well, we all
I've
have
been
a
on the
long way to go, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the spiritual path 50 years, so I just, I said, bless you. I told him 6 times that he had incredible intuition, even though he didn't feel he had.
Yeah. Um, my experience has been the ego, emotions, thoughts become emotions, emotions become thoughts and beliefs, and that's where we often live and take action from. And it seems like it's this veil, um, Wizard of Oz type of thing, like hiding this spiritual beauty with that human suffering you just mentioned, with the trapped emotions, with this, oh, I'm not worthwhile, I'm a loser, I'm not XYZ. But really, when we start letting them go and stop believing those stories, stop believing those old patterns, that's where we do free ourselves. And it's remarkable because now it doesn't feel like mine. I understand the identity that's coming forth, but I'm no longer trapped in these little pockets of suffering. You think that's what this is about? Is sort of learning. I'm a big fan of, Michael Singer is, but I mean, obviously, we're here to learn and grow.
Right. That's the only thing we can do is learn and grow. That's what we're here to do. And the achievements are more ego oriented. They're personality oriented. They're not things that we can necessarily take with us. But the fact is that we get gifts. We are given gifts, and if we and it could be from past lives. um I don't, I believe in, I mean, I can believe in reincarnation, but I'm not so into this, 8 lifetimes ago I knifed somebody and this is why this is happening today.
Right.
So the thing is that to me, I just want to deal with what is today. The fact
Yeah.
that I did something is interesting, perhaps, but the fact is that it doesn't really do me anything right now. Is right here is my moment to let it go, whatever it is, from whenever it came.
Yeah. Well, the funny, again, another trapping of the mind is being trapped in the past or being trapped in some quote unquote predictive future. We always think the future is going to be great, but it's the only time we really experience is in the present moment. And if we're trapped in the past, we just keep reliving whatever it might have been, and it's not happening anymore. We just replaying because it's stuck. Or is it samskaras that gets trapped in our field?
Sure.
But only in the present moment do we really live, and yet we're so trapped in the past and in the future.
Yes, we are. And I'm thinking about, I remember what is it, Cinema 70, when the in the movie theater, when the curtains spread and the screen was wider for certain
Right.
movies, the past and the future, the value of it is it gives us a wider framework, even though they're really sticky. And they're really, I'm thinking in the moment of the gloriousness of all the potentialities that we can get stuck in, that we have present and future. Even though there's only present, we have future and past. Like the wider screen, makes a bigger screen for the movie, and it makes it more attractive. The idea is to get out of the movie of our life and to
Yeah.
watch it from the audience. and
Yeah.
and the bigger screen, is a reflection of the beauty of nature. It's the beauty of sunrise, it's the beauty of sunset, it's the beauty of the leaves changing in the fall, it's the beauty of the snow we had here the last night, the beauty of the beauty of victory and the beauty of defeat, the beauty of people being crowded together and being alone. Each of them has a beauty, and the richness of the and extensiveness of the quicksand is beautiful. And the idea is to not get stuck in the quicksand. But the fact that it's however quicksand works is that is also divine and also a gift. None of it is not divine. There isn't anything that is not divine, even the sadness and happiness.
So one thing that is very important to me, and I think most people, whether they're aware of it or not, is policy, public policy, cultural kind of foundations. And much of that starts with early childhood development, schools. And I feel like, much of schooling is about regurgitation, information, spitting it back out, remembering, taking a test well, writing a paper well, whatever it might be. But it's not so much about the development of an individual. It's not so much about honing one's skills and gifts and loves. Doesn't teach one how to heal wounds or deal with an abusive father. None of these kind of things does it help you navigate the world with. So I feel like we're really failing ourselves. And granted, our country is more based on consumerism, capitalism, sell and buy, and that's the culture. But as humans, and I think we were discussing earlier that this is a new era of ascension, of expansion. What would you say as far as a policy on getting the public more on track and more aligned in a
Well,
public
I
setting
mean,
with who they are? Yeah.
well, it's really interesting because it's phenomenal how depraved our education system is. I mean, if you could come up with all of the if you like if you didn't want to pick black jokers and you put out a deck of cards, it's like you're only picking black jokers. But I don't concern myself with much of that. I've seen in my 75 years on this earth and 50 years in spirituality, I've seen a hell of a lot of change. I remember when I first got to California 50 years ago, and there was this thing called natural foods. And I thought, wow, and vegetarianism, wow. And then I found metaphysical bookstores, wow. And so I've seen so many changes. You can't stop it. Governments can't stop it. Um, Greediness can't stop it. Billionaires can't stop it. I don't worry about it personally, and
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to be able to be a world traveler here the last 20 years, other than COVID. Other than COVID winters, I've only spent one winter in the US since '98.
Hmm.
And so in where I one of the places I normally spend winter is Rishikesh, India, where the Beatles went, and in the been going there more than 20 years. And about 8 or 10 years ago, the double the people came from double the countries, and people, and I like to say the yoga center. I talked with a podcast guy last week, and I said, well, how many yoga centers are there within 10 miles of you in Florida? He said, enough. And I said, well, that's happening all over the world. And
Yeah.
that wasn't happening in the 70s and 80s. It's happening now. And we were talking a little bit before this, Dwapara Yuga. This is what we're experiencing now, I believe, is the chaos. I call it the dying dinosaur dance. This is the chaos dying.
Yeah.
And what's coming, whether it's indigo children, or whether it's more consciousness, and whether it's a man who 37 who finds spirituality in 2020 and thinks this is a hot potato. This is the real thing. It doesn't really matter. It's happening. Nobody can stop it. And
Yeah.
so I've just seen so many changes, and I see the consciousness changing, and I see phrases. The idea that in the early 70s, when you first heard the word karma, you thought, "Oh, what's that?" And then somebody said what it was, and then 6 months later, a year later, you said, "Oh, well, that's my karma." And they said, "Well, what's karma?" And
Sure.
like, karma is like mainstream TV now.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right. Right.
and the natural has become mainstream advertising, even though they have some have corrupted it by it's not actually natural.
Right.
But that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's
No,
the place. Excuse me, this is important. That's the place not to get stuck.
yeah. Yeah.
That they're corrupting the word natural. The fact is that it's being used. That's the
Yeah.
beauty.
But you're right, though. It is happening whether people want to encourage it or not, it is happening collectively throughout the globe. And I see it as well. Smoothie shops and health food stores and places that didn't exist a few years ago. Now there's one every few miles. So maybe the opposite will happen. The public will change, and then the policy will eventually change because the public has changed, and not the other way around. But either way, it's happening.
Well, we can hope that that will happen. We haven't seen. I was just thinking that. I remember, we're thinking that whether it was a collective thought or not, that maybe we'd get a president in our office who had smoked pot and da 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 da, and it would be a different society. But that didn't. They may have smoked it, but it didn't seem to change. And
Right.
and
Right.
again, I don't concern myself with that. I
Yeah.
see what I see when I've traveled all over the world, the changes and the consciousness and the concern. I have clients all over the world, and I see what's going on a grassroots level, and that's a power.
I agree.
I mean, it's not just a power because it's grassroots, but it has a divine energy in it, and that divine energy will not be contained.
Yeah. Like the ocean. Yeah. The power.
Yeah.
Um, what else? So I saw you had something called the Wheel of Totality. Do you want to touch base on that?
Absolutely. So this was a modality that was I say given to me, that this has such a high vibration that it's nothing that I could have come up with on my own. And so the idea is that the empty houses that nobody talks about in astrology contain awareness. All houses in astrology contain awareness on its highest frequency. On its lowest frequency, 10th house is about career, but it's the highest point in the sky. And on its highest frequency, it's about love, because that's the action in the world. And so the Wheel of Totality has an awareness in each of the houses. But if you have a planet there, then you have an ability on that awareness. But if you don't have a planet there, then it's a blank spot or a place of ignorance. And so by overlaying people's natal charts onto the Wheel of Totality, I can help them to see what it is that they don't quite get. And these things that we don't quite get, we don't work on until our late 40s or 50. And why is that? Because in our 20s and 30s, we're not really interested in looking at our deficiencies. We're working on building up our ego. But in our 40s, our early 40s, when we are, whether you've got kids or not, you get tired and you get worn down, and you start looking for solutions rather than pushing your way through from what you know. And all of a sudden, I like to say, as a 20-year-old, if I say to you, open your heart, you're going to say, my heart's open. But if you're 50 and I say that, you're going to say, well, tell me more, because that's the fourth time I've heard it this week.
Well, not to mention, once you're 40 and 50, you see certain things that haven't happened or mistakes you've made, regrets you have, and that's when you start, really pursuing who you are and the meaning of life. And then you start seeing the finite, mortality. As even though we were spiritual beings, obviously the body will die, and that's something that does hang over people's head to one degree or another.
So yeah, the ability to be able to analyze your deficiencies is because you're not driving your ego, and you realize that it's not working, that you've had that same
Right.
crappy relationship
Yeah.
in partnerships, so many times that you don't go into that. You don't want relationship at that point, but then there's a place where you say, well, let me start working on myself. So yeah, so the Wheel of Totality is it's a very high vibration teaching. And I remember recently at a show, somebody said, oh, this is deep. It's like there was even though the psychic fair type things that I do are deep, was a level that she wasn't prepared for, how deep, and it's not so much confrontive. It could be confrontive, but it's not so confrontive because it's not accusatory and it's not judgmental. It's all,
Right.
I like to say what I do is science and intuition, that it's mathematical. Coming back to your first question, that it's mathematical in the sense that they can't help but say yes, that I'm saying that because you don't have a planet in this house, that this particular skill is not one that you have. And the skills are like the fifth house is being able to trust and accept what is. And the eighth house of the ninth house of being able to be in emptiness, to stay in emptiness and to quiet your being, and the 12th house of being able to accept change, and the seventh house of relationship, which is seeing through conditioning, that the people who have an empty seventh house have trouble with conditioning, and so they come to me trying to heal from stories that aren't theirs. It's parent stories.
Yeah. I have a question. It's perhaps a dopey question.
There are no dopey questions.
No, you might just. There are some, maybe. So,
oh, wait a minute! You're going to create the first dopey question.
Yes.
The first real dopey
it'll
question.
be, it's like the 10 millionth dopey question. Astrology, and again, I don't know much about astrology, so I'm asking perhaps out of ignorance. If I recall it correctly, it's about the positioning of the planets, and probably originally was the original 7 planets. I think there was originally thought, and then they said, well, then there was 9, and now there are billions and billions of planets and billions of stars, etc. Has that changed the structure of astrology, or has it influenced that at all, or is it irrelevant?
You're talking about the additional planets?
Yeah, I mean, just there's, obviously.
So Vedic astrology, the astrology of India, they didn't use the outer planets because they didn't know about them. And then Western astrology uses them because obviously Western astrology was codified after the planets were discovered. I don't use the outer planets particularly, and the reason I don't is because they are slower and they're more generational. And I'm not looking for more data points. I'm looking to help people to wake up to who they are. And I feel that the inner planets are at your core. It's like they're oh, I don't know. If you're looking for a tire store, there's a great tire store in my town, but I'm 3,000 miles away. So it isn't really much of an effect for you. You need to have something closer, something that's more relevant to you.
Mhm.
And so the outer planets and the asteroids too, which have become very popular, I just think that they confuse people. They're not interested in waking up. They're interested in having data points. I call it billable hours. The astrologers long time ago realized that if you just give the reading and nobody comes back, then that's not so good for business. But if you can create a problem, then you can then give them the solution through healings, and then with the progress charts and the transits, you can find that we can try to solve tomorrow's problem today, and it becomes, you give your power away. It's no different than God on the throne. Giving our power away to a God on the throne is that it becomes something outside yourself that you can't control. This is Kali Yuga thinking. This is the density. The way that I do it, what I believe, what I've come to is that they're indicators of the inner planets, are the indicators of our particular stories, and the weak planets, the ones that are afflicted, they're debilitated, which means that they're in their least favorite place. These are our challenges in life, and so what I do is to concentrate on neither good nor bad, right or wrong, is to help people to realize that let's see, what did I have recently? A debilitated sun means that you have low self-esteem. And if you have low self-esteem, then you start judging yourself, and you may judge other people. And then if you're, and then it can happen that perhaps your sun is in is in Cancer, which is ruled by Moon. So then the Moon's going to get affected, and so then the planets that are conjunct with Moon get affected, and it becomes a bit of a pity party. Is that it spreads around, that it starts, it starts with my team won't win, then the dog barks, and then and then there's a mess in the kitchen, and then and then the car doesn't start, and it's just it just goes on and on, that we yell at our girlfriend. It's a continual thing, that when we get triggered, those triggers expand, and we multiply them into more bummers,
Sure.
from blessings to bummers. And so what I'm trying to do is to take that all apart, is to make it the mechanicalness, that if you can just observe that when you get triggered, then you go into low self-esteem. And it isn't that you change, it's that your viewpoint changes. And so if you can change your viewpoint to, maybe I'm not my best self when I'm triggered, but I'm not going to buy into
Right.
those stories. And when you stop buying into the stories, then they don't run on and on and on.
Yeah. And you stay in those places for shorter periods of time then.
Yes, absolutely.
So question for you, Indra. There are some days that I have great clarity, can see, almost seems like I could see forever. And then it seems like it'll last forever. And then say a week later, I feel like there's like a cloud over my eyes and don't feel connected. What happens during those times? Is that an astrological type of scenario, or?
Well, it could be astrological, and I don't personally care so much about where the planets are. I care more about I care more about my energy. I care more about because if I'm strong, then I can buffer the strong winds of life. And so I think what happens is you get triggered, and I think you don't realize it, is like you're trying to you're trying to write a screenplay for TV, and you watch TV and you see a program that's got excellent writing, and so all of a sudden the next morning you're in a cloud. The cloud is that they did it better than me. Rather than getting inspired that that's how good I want to write, we think of, wow, I'll never write that good. And so I think there's what the dark cloud mostly comes is when we buy into something, that
We
all of a
start we
sudden.
start feeding it, yeah. Tony
Yeah.
Robbins has a great line. He says something like, you don't catch depression. You put yourself into it, just slowly, piece by piece. You go, I stink, I'm
Yes.
not good, blah, blah, and you start going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And you don't catch it.
Absolutely. So I like to, what aspects are, is that, Pluto's square. Have you heard about this? That, that Pluto is squaring my planet, and so I've got a bummer going on. And so it's called aspects. It's a planets that have a 90-degree or 120-degree, any relationship, that's called an aspect. So I say to people, I say, if your neighbor makes noise and it bothers you, whose fault is it?
Sure.
That's a question for you.
Sure.
Whose fault is it?
Well, it's always a choice on how we respond to something. So,
Oh,
yeah,
okay. So in your 20s and 30s, it's going to be his fault, the
yeah.
neighbor's fault.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And most
But as
people
you
are
get
still stuck in that. Yeah.
okay, but when you get older, you realize that it's your choice. And so
Sure.
the idea is while there may be an aspect, the fact is that it's the planetary energy, it's your energy of that planet that's being aspected. It's your relationship with that particular planet, and being on the high side of that planet, that it's affecting you. And if you're high on that, then you don't get touched.
Stupid question. Not stupid. Brilliant question. What does this really have to do with the planets? Like, why couldn't it just be just I'm upset
I
about this. My neighbor's making noise.
Well, the neighbors making noise it's a metaphor for the idea that I don't think that aspects are important. And I thought you were going to ask me this question before,
Ah,
is how do the planets affect us? And the answer is they imprint us, that somehow that there is a cosmic energy that comes through, that somehow at the time that we're born, that that imprints us with a certain frequencies, certain a set of frequencies. And so the planets, we call it the planets, and they are how do I want to think of it? It's a generic set of life experiences. And so Jupiter is about expansion. I use the metaphor of floating in a hot air balloon. And so when your Jupiter is happy, then you can float freely and you can expand, you can commit yourself. And it's like an oil in your life. If you don't have that good Jupiter, then it's really very hard to make changes. So on the low side, then it's afraid to expand. And when you don't have, and then that's in that area. And so Saturn is about focus and discipline. On the low side, it's fear. That's its area. And Venus, which I consider to be the most misunderstood planet, on the high side is integrity, and on the low side its bailiwick is judgments and criticism and greed and critical thinking and comparisons. And so they each have their they have their area, their bailiwick, and these 7 inner planets, plus we use the south and the north and south node of the moon. They seem to contain enough to be our human life. And I think that if we were on a different planet, that these criteria would be completely different. I mean, not maybe in the solar system there may be some similarities, but in another solar system, then this matrix would be might be completely different. That perhaps greed and integrity. Think about this: that greed and integrity isn't even an issue. It isn't even come up.
So
because they don't have a planet like that.
So withdraw us from the planets, from the moon, from all of that. What are we left with?
Withdraw from the planets?
Let's go to a whole other place. No planets exist, no moon. What do we carry with us?
Well, yeah, that's a hard question because I don't know that planet, but I mean, we could what could we carry with us? We could carry with
I'm
us
saying, like,
divinity.
are we pure then? Are we blissful? Are we, because you're saying the
You
planets,
know,
right, influence us in this way. So what are we without the
so
planets?
so there's I mean, there's a astral plane, there's a causal plane, and there are things to work out on when in Autobiography of a Yogi, Paramahansa Yogananda, when he met his guru died, Sri Yukteswar, and he was in India when Yogananda was in India, and his guru died, and he was sad and desolate, and his life was, it was really a difficult time for him, and he was going to leave, but he decided to wait one more time, hoping that he would connect with Yukteswar. And Yukteswar appeared to him, and he said, "I'm doing fine." He said, "I got sent to Haranaloka. Haranaloka is a causal plane planet, and he's helping people who die in Mahasamadhi. They die consciously. Only people who die consciously on Earth go to Haranaloka, and he's helping them with their challenges on the causal plane. Whatever those are, it may be more enunciated in the book that I can't remember right at the moment, but he might go into what those things are. But it's I have no idea what they could be, what it looks like.
Yeah. Would that perhaps be, if you believe or not, where guides come from, spiritual guides or angels or something along those lines,
It
perhaps?
could be from there. I think it's never ending. I think
Yeah.
it's a matrix that's beyond our, we're trying to conceive of it with our human mind, and that doesn't work. And so
Yeah.
I'd
No, it
rather
doesn't.
go into silence, and then an image of what it could be like will come. But this
Yeah.
is an idea that here's a high being that we considered a master who dies Mahasamadhi, and he's going there to help other people, because even though they've left here Mahasamadhi, which is the biggest blue ribbon prize there is, and he's helping them on the causal plane with their levels of existence on that level. The bodhisattvas, have a whole story of coming back to help people and still have karma to work out, or things to work out, in order to be completely free. It's a it's uh, I don't need to personally. I don't need to understand it. I don't need
Sure.
I can be admiring of it, and I can be inspired by it, but I don't have to understand it and know it specifically.
Of course, I agree. But it is fascinating to ponder.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean the pondering is it never ends.
So Indra, we'll close up in just a sec. So what would you tell people who are looking for some answers or maybe struggling a bit, um, who are trying to free themselves, who are looking for a more meaningful life? What would you say for them? Any suggestions that you could possibly provide them?
Well, yeah, looking for more meaning in your life. Hang out with high frequency people, and that can be, it doesn't have to be personal. It
Yeah.
can be online and it can be in books. I told the client yesterday, music, a person who is having trouble finding the joy in her life. It's not that the joy isn't there, she's just not seeing it. So hang out with high vibration music, that hang out with high vibration people through books or by documentaries or whatever it is that works for you. You need to, and a really important point that I just read in books again to remind me that we need, that it's about our will, that we have to engage our will, that we can
Yeah.
overcome the difficulties, but we have to engage the will, the strengths that we have. Otherwise we keep ourselves small. And I love the galactic gas talking. The point of the modalities isn't that the modalities are more important, but the modalities help us, are tools in order to help us to, like a hammer. I mean, it's hard to get a nail in without a hammer. The hammer is very useful, but it is not the God. It's just a tool. And
Yeah.
so the modalities are the tool. But on the other hand, the modalities are important because they are the tools, and they help us to get what we don't get. The client who has planets in 4 or 5 houses and 7 or 8 empty, they know what they know really well, but what they don't know, they don't really have a clue about. And that's why they find partners who have how planets in those other houses in order to give them those clues. And it's a seeking that doesn't seem to stop with the end of the body. It's a
Yeah.
seeking that is forever, it seems. And I think we have to enjoy the journey rather than worry about the destination.
Yeah. The journey is where the time is spent. The destination is not.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah, good.
go ahead. I was just going to say that if people are interested, I call them life readings for people. I use the Enneagram. I use the Vedic astrology and the Wheel of Totality and a few other modalities to throw in to give people to place them in their life, to place them in the sense of what their core concerns are, what their core issues are. Most people are pretty aware of them, but they don't realize that it's not a side issue. That's the issue.
Mm.
And that by understanding that gives them the power, and it gives them a sense of uh, uh, um, ability to be able to overcome these challenges and difficulties, and to ask for help is an enlightened act. And so if people are interested in these readings, it can be very helpful. The idea is to become who we really are, and it's not the personality.
Yeah. And so where could folks find you?
So I have a website, indrarinzler.com, my email, indrarinzler at gmail.com, and I do an offer on the podcast. If anybody's interested in getting their Vedic chart, I'd be happy to send that for free. Just email me your date, birth, time, date, and place, and I'll send you back the chart and a little chart on how to read it if people are interested in that.
Okay. Well, Indra, so nice speaking with you today. This is always fun. This is why I love this, because we get to connect in ways that in general you don't get to connect to people on a daily basis.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
It's beautiful, sir. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Okay, blessings to you.
You be well.